Yes.
Mr. Brown, I'm now going to ask you some questions about discretionary support and assistance. I'm going to start off by asking you questions about the application for one-off grants. So we looked earlier at the service specification, which set out the purpose of the discretionary grants, which is criteria that the Department of Health and Social Care had set out for you to apply. Is that right?
Yes.
And you that were also commissioned to carry out a review of, when I say you, I mean EBS, a review of the discretionary support available to beneficiaries by the Department of Health and Social Care, and you undertook that at the end of 2017 and completed it in April 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What did that review entail?
The review was commissioned in acknowledgement that within the Alliance House organisations there were various differing schemes being followed, and the department and the minister was keen that there was a single scheme for England. The review involved talking to beneficiaries in terms of understanding what they would want from a discretionary scheme, how they would wish to access it, alongside using our own expertise for some of the other directed services where we operate discretionary schemes, and also the department's view. So that sort of came together in terms of reviewing and then coming up with what became the sort of single discretionary grant scheme.
And is it right that 255 beneficiaries responded to that review through a mixture of focus groups and online and telephone surveys?
That's right.
Can we look then at the what I think is the information that's given as about what's available? It's WITN 4688057. You can tell us what this document is. So it's England Infected Blood Support Scheme, income top-up and child payment support information. Sorry, that's not the right document that I want to take you to. Sorry, it's WITN 4688058. So EBS discretionary one-off payments guidance documents. So is this a guidance document that's made available to members of the scheme on the website?
That's my understanding, yes.
And we can see here that it describes what discretionary one-off payments are, form of financial support that beneficiaries and bereaved spouses and partners may apply for. So there are two categories of people that can apply for this. The primary beneficiaries, who are those that are infected by blood and blood products, and those who are infected by them.
Yes.
And then the bereaved spouses and partners. And it's to cover the cost of certain essential health-related items or services. And then it directs the applicant to fill out the discretionary one-off payment application form, and then it sets out what is available. Down the left-hand side, there are a range of different types of one-off payments that can be applied for, and then the maximum per annum that will be awarded on an application. And it's right, is it? Sorry, can we just go back up a little bit, please, Shimik? That this table that we're looking at here is the discretionary one-off payments that are available for infected beneficiaries. So under the specification that we looked at, the primary beneficiaries. Yes. We can see that includes a wide range of different types of support, from counselling, respite breaks, hospital travel, dental costs, and then right down to the bottom, funeral pre-payment plan. And then if we go over the page, we can see that there is a different table for the support that is available for the bereaved spouses or partners, and it's a much slimmer version of much slimmer version of the table. Can you explain to us why different kinds of support are available for the different categories of applicants?
I can't explain it other than perhaps direct you to seek clarification from DHSC in terms of the basis at which they signed off the scheme that they wished us to operate on their behalf. The reasoning behind that, wasn't my, I had no influence over or Eve's directly in terms of why there was a difference.
So that's a decision made by the Department of Health and Social
right.
Care. Did anything come out of the review that Eves undertook that would suggest that this was the way to go?
As I was not personally involved in that level of detail, I can't verify that point, I'm afraid.
Is it right to understand that following the review, the decision made by the Department of Health and Social Care was that these applications for these discretionary one-off grants would not be means tested?
Yes.
But presumably the applicants still needed to fulfil the criteria that we looked at under the specification in order to show that they needed this this particular item, that it was related to their health, and they couldn't meet the need in another way.
Yes.
If we go over the next page of the guidance, please, Shimik, we can see the procedural requirements. I'm not going to look at the counselling one because I understand that that's changed, I think, from the version we're looking at here, and that's been updated. So if we could go down to the bottom to look at what's required if you want a respite break. So it must be recommended by a medical professional following a period of ill health or as a direct result of HIV and/or hepatitis C infection or treatment. It should be for no longer than a week and should not be considered a long-haul flight if you're going abroad. And then it sets out what you have to send in: discretionary one-off payment application form, the medical letter, and 2 quotes. Have you ever had any concerns raised through the focus groups or otherwise from beneficiaries about the procedural requirements for one-off discretionary grants?
They may have raised them, but it's not that I am aware of.
Shemit, you can take that down. I'm just going to ask you now some questions about the income top-up support that's available. Is it right to understand that at the point that Eves inherited, if I can put it that way, the beneficiaries from the Alliance House organisations, there were a number of different income top-up payments that people were receiving as a hangover from the fact that there were 5 different schemes applying different rules and different thresholds.
Yes.
And so the purpose, as you've said, of the review was to harmonise those income top-up payments, and so that everybody would get the same payment as somebody that is in a similar situation to them. And you say in your witness statement that the result of the decisions that the department made to change the income top-up scheme led to many more people being eligible for the income top-up support. Is that right?
That's right.
So the Eves had inherited 410 people on income top-up, and by the time the consequences of the review had worked through, there were over 1,000 people on income top-up. And you also tell us in your witness statement that people were required to reapply for an income top-up payment. So the review's undertaken, the thresholds are changed, and then people are invited to apply for an income top-up payment. Is that right?
That's right.
And is it right to understand that's the only time that EBS has required those beneficiaries transferring from the Alliance House organisation to reapply for a benefit that they already had?
That's right.
And why was that? Why did you ask people to reapply?
My understanding is that DHSC were keen that we reviewed the individual circumstances, that things may have changed in that time, and therefore an annual review of that was necessary, and we were instructed in that way. So that's why we do it. It isn't something which EBS, as run by NHS BSA, has a discretion on, and we have just chosen to review these annually because we think it's best to do that. It is part of the specification for us running the EBS service for the department.
And is it right that once the means testing for the discretionary one-off grants had been removed, this is in fact the only means-tested payment that EBS makes?
Yes.
And you also tell us in your witness statement that you identified 57 people who may be less well off after the review to the discretionary top-up scheme was undertaken. Is that right?
Yes.
And so the way that was dealt with was by introducing introducing the changes to their top-up schemes on a tapered basis, so that it wasn't they didn't just go off a cliff edge.
That's right.
and their payments were changed.
Yes, there was an element of transition towards the new entitlement.
And then you also tell us that as a result of the uplift in payments to primary beneficiaries, i.e. the infected community, in April 2019, income top-up payments ceased for that cohort of beneficiaries.
Yes.
And that's presumably because the increase in their annual payments took them over the threshold. Is that right?
That's right.
So as we are today, the income top-up payments are available to the bereaved community only.
That's right.
Can we then look at the document that I had up earlier wrongly, WITN 4688057. So this looks like information that's provided on the website about income top-up and child payments. Is that right?
That's right.
And so if we look at income top-up payments for bereaved spouses and partners, it's a discretionary monthly payment to increase the household income to help with general living costs. An assessment is made of the beneficiary's household income, and if the income is below set thresholds, an application can be made to receive regular payments. So do we understand that if the household income is less than £10,000, you will receive £18,000?
That's correct.
So it's not a scheme that guarantees a particular level of income. It is a top-up scheme.
Exactly. Yes.
Why is it that the criteria is based on household income when the payment doesn't take into account the makeup of the household?
That is a policy decision. The view of the department was that the full household income should be counted, and we are implementing that on their behalf.
Because we've looked at previously, and for example, in the Alliance House Organisation's evidence, looked at various different policies of income top-up and so on. And certainly for some of the schemes where it was based on the household income being taken into account, the corresponding payment also took into account the fact that there were 2 adults and 2 children, or 4 children, or whatever it was in the payment. So if the household was bigger, then one got more. which was the flip side of taking into account the household income. Do you I understand what you're saying, it's the department's decision. Do you know why they came to that decision?
I think they will have evaluated it and come to the conclusion that based on the spirit of the scheme and what was available, that it was appropriate. They may have had it. I don't know whether they will have, but they may have needed to clear that from a minister as well in terms of adopting that kind of approach. Our role is to implement the scheme as we are instructed.
And then just picking up what's said about child payments in the second half at the bottom of that page. So they are means-tested payments to help with the cost of bringing up children of an infected beneficiary. So that's the primary beneficiary, yes, whether it's infected by the blood and blood products or through that route. Dependents are children of an infected beneficiary up to the age of 18 years or up to 21 in full-time education. And the payments are available to the primary care provider of the child or children and can only be made where the beneficiary has qualified for an income top-up payment. So the only people that can qualify for an income top-up payment is a bereaved partner or spouse.
Yes.
And the payment must be for the child of an infected beneficiary who is up to 18 years or 21 in full-time education.
Yes.
And then we have the rates there. Although, slightly oddly, it then says infected beneficiaries may qualify for a child payment by completing an EBS child payment application form and assist us having a household income under £37,900. So there does seem to be provision for a primary beneficiary to make such an application if their income is below £37,900.
Yes.
Yes. Are the income top-up payments reviewed every year by EBS?
Not by EBS. I mean, we are the scheme administrator. Do you mean the amounts that we? Do you mean the rates?
Amounts you pay.
The rates we pay out.
Yeah. Do you carry out reviews? So anyone that's getting an income top-up, do you check in with them about what their income is for the year to check that they're getting the right rate?
I would need to clarify that with the team. That isn't something that level of detail I'm able to confirm either way.
You may not know the answer to this, but the inquiry's received some information that suggests that those reviews are being undertaken at the moment. Is that something you can help us with?
I can't, I'm afraid. I can get the information for you, but it sounds like it is something that's happening at an operational level within the team, at the request of the department.
I just wanted to put one matter to you in relation to that. Given the statement made by the Paymaster General on the 25th of March that beneficiaries will continue to receive their current payments until the new changes come in, would it be your understanding that changes to payments shouldn't be being made in the interim, even if they arise out of reviews, annual reviews that would be taking place in the usual course?
Yes.
Then I'm going to turn to the issue of lump sum payments for the bereaved. And we saw in the specification the obligation on the NHS BSA to administer a one-off lump sum payment to spouses and partners of beneficiaries who have died. And we looked at the criteria there that the primary or beneficiary had to have passed away where the infection with HIV and or hepatitis C contributed to their death. What is the test that EBS applies to that? What's the burden of proof that EBS applies to that test to establish whether or not the infection with HIV and or hepatitis C contributed to the death?
Again, that's a detailed question at a working level, which I would be guessing, and I wouldn't want to mislead the inquiry on that one. But I can certainly find that information for the inquiry.
There is exhibited to your statement is a Department of Health is a policy from the Alliance from December 2016. Perhaps we can just look at that. Let me just check I've got the right reference for that. Wrong file, that's why. Yes, it's WITN 449606. So this is, if you go to page 2, this is a Department of Health policy from December 2016, infected blood, reform of financial and other support in England, and says new £10,000 payment for bereaved spouses. And if we look at page 2 of that, of the box at the bottom, it sets out the eligibility to qualify for the 10,000 payments, application form. The deceased person must have received a payment from the scheme. You're the partner or spouse at the time of the person's death. And lastly, infection with HIV and or hepatitis C or treatment for the infection contributed to the death of the registrant or primary beneficiary. And then it sets out at the rest of that policy how that can be, how that information can be provided by way of death certificate or by way of information from a GP or a clinician. Is that, looking at that document, is that the document, do you think, that the EBS is applying when considering these applications?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
So even though it's a December 2016 document, that's the one they're still using?
Yes.
And how, are you aware of any difficulties that any applicants have had in fulfilling the criteria of showing that the HIV or hepatitis C or infection or treatment contributed to the death of their partner?
The only issues that I'm aware of is the speed at which they can provide it, where a bereaved contacts us and is seeking the extra support. Sometimes awaiting the death certificate or the other evidence that's summarised can take a little bit of time, and that can be anxious for them in terms of waiting. So there's not been an issue in terms of getting it. It's simply been that they've suffered a bereavement, and we haven't got the verification to support that, and that's led to on rare occasions it's led to a little bit of tension between the individual and the EBS team, because we can't pay out £10,000 without having without having that evidence.
And of course, the practical significance of that for the bereaved partner is that the payments that their partner were receiving from EBS will have stopped because of the death. So they will be suffering presumably a significant loss of income. Exactly.
I mean, we do have responsibilities in terms of this is public money that we are paying out. We have these policies to comply with. We do try. We will process these as quickly and, if necessary, same day. when the information comes in terms of making a payment, recognising that in some cases the money is actually needed. But I do take your point in terms of the anxiety and the distress in terms of waiting to get confirmation.
And has any consideration been given to trying to smooth that process by perhaps allowing the payments to continue, the monthly or quarterly payments or whatever they are that the deceased person would have received had they still been alive, and then taking that out of the lump sum? Should that be what the bereaved partner would wish?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not aware that that has. That is an aspect of discretion, if you like, that we have been given, or that the department are minded to give us that discretion to use, acknowledging that in some cases it might take some time to collect all the information. What we do is, as I said earlier, we stay in touch with the bereaved, and as soon as the information comes in, we process it straight away and give them their payment.
Just a few more general questions. How are changes to payments and to policies and so on notified to beneficiaries?
Sorry, could you?
So when there's a change in policy or change in threshold rates for income top-up supports or something of that nature, how would that be notified to beneficiaries?
Sure. Sometimes beneficiaries are aware at the same time as ourselves in terms of because it's announced publicly in terms of by the department and by the helper organisations. But once we have reassessed and determined there is an adjusted payment, then we notify each beneficiary. They get an individual notification letter setting out the change in payment.
And if a beneficiary wished to go and live abroad, do you know whether that would have any impact on their payments?
Not to my knowledge. Their payments are determined by. Are we talking about primary?
Yes. So a regular annual payment.
Yeah. Is that the payment is determined in terms of eligibility under EADS because they were infected in England, not because they live abroad. And we do have some beneficiaries that live outside of England. Some live in other parts of the UK, and some do live outside of the UK.
I'm now just going to ask you some questions about the procedure for appeals, and then those are the questions from me. But I have a number of questions already from call participants, but I'll take a break after that. We saw in the service specification that we looked at earlier the obligation on the NHS BSA to establish and maintain an appeal panel. And you tell us in your witness statement that there is a right of appeal against a decision, a medical decision, if I can put it that way. So that would be an application to come onto the scheme, an application to move from stage 1 to stage 2 HCV payment, and an application for a special category mechanism. Is that correct?
Yes.
So those applications have a right of appeal to the independent appeal panel.
Yes.
The other applications that are classed as non-medical appeals, those are applications against discretionary grants for income top-up or for one-off discretionary grants, don't have a right of appeal to that independent appeal panel, but will go to the customer resolution team as a complaint within the NHS BSA. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
And your witness statement also tells us that the independent appeal panel is made up of a legal chairperson and 3 clinical consultants. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you recall who the medical consultants are, the clinical consultants are sitting on the appeal panel?
I can't off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
I was asked to ask you that question. I will try and find it in your witness statement for when we come back.
It will be in there.
And your witness statement also tells us that there have so far, or as of March 2020, there have been 130 appeals. 17 have succeeded, 105 have been declined, and 8 are pending further information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The service specification that we looked at earlier also requires the NHS BSA to establish the process by which the appeal panel operates. Is that right?
That's right.
Why is it that the process does not allow for a beneficiary to attend the appeal panel hearing in person?
When we were commissioned to set up an appeal panel, various options were explored with the department officials. The one which we've ended up with in terms of, allowing appeals to be thoroughly and properly considered, but also for them to happen without there being long delays for beneficiaries to hear the outcome of the appeal, meant that the scheme as defined was the one that was signed off, and we were asked to set up, and we've set that scheme up.
Has any consideration been given to having a process whereby, for some appeals where the applicant's credibility is in play, because they're alleging that a treatment happened particular time, and that's not supported by any of the other evidence, that in those cases it would be appropriate to have a hearing in person so that their credibility could be assessed properly by the appeal panel?
If DHSC were supportive of, in any circumstances, there being an in-person appeal route, and they were willing to either co-design that with us or certainly define it in terms of our directions, then we would operate that for any aspect, that not just that example that you've shared. What we can't do as the scheme administrator is simply go off because we feel that it may in some circumstances be by some beneficiaries preferable to have an in-person. We can't just go off and set up a in-person appeal process. That would have to be something which the department, who ultimately own the scheme, would need to sign off on.
So although the specification states that it's for the NHS BSA to establish the process, in reality that does require the cooperation, consent and agreement of the DHSC. Apart from anything, they've got to pay for you to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I was trying not to mention the money aspect of it, but it is. Obviously, we would incur costs in terms of travel and accommodation and other things, and if that was part of the requirement, which is fine, but yes, it would increase the operational cost of the service. But if they were supportive of that, and we had that commission, then we would implement that.
Are the names of the independent panel, and forgive me because I can't take you to them in your witness statement, but are the names published to your knowledge?
They are published to my knowledge.
On the website?
On our website, I can't be certain. Sorry, it might be in the annual report or somewhere where it will have been published.
And do you are you able to give us any information about how their positions are, whether their positions are advertised and how appointments are made and so on?
Yes, so the posts are advertised, and there's a open recruitment process. The individuals who express an interest and apply have to go through an application process, and from that there's a selection. That's the process we follow.
And that open application process and the interviews and so on, that's coordinated by yourselves, is it?
It is, yes.
And we saw in the specification that the DHSC had a right of veto over appointments. Has that ever been exercised?
Never been exercised. I can assure you on that. They've chosen to include that within the requirements of the scheme, which is fine. This is their scheme ultimately, but they've never applied that.
So those are the questions that I had for Mr. Brown. I've already had in quite a lot of questions from core participants, which I've asked some of them about the appeal, but and I anticipate there will be more to come. So if we could take a break now.
Right. How long do you think you need?
Well, if I could have 20 minutes. And then I know that's going slightly into lunchtime, but I hope then we would be able to finish.
Well, it's going to eat into the afternoon session as well. So can we manage it, do you think, in 15?
So yes, what I was going to suggest is if we could, yes, so if we could come back a shade before 1 o'clock with a view to.
Let's come back at 5 to 1.
Thank you.